this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Easter Egg Wiggle Trivet, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Please go to the link in the description so you can get right and left-handed video tutorials, as well as a link to the pattern and all the supplies you need. To make this pattern, you'll need Lily Sugar and Cream and a USH 5mm crochet hook. This one is by Susan Bates. This pattern is a great stash buster. You need about half a skein to make the base mesh that sort of builds our pattern where we start making our Easter egg. But after that, this is a great pattern for breaking out all those small balls and partial skeins and really using up all those bright, beautiful colors that you just couldn't get rid of. This is the perfect project for stash busting. So first, let's take a quick look at the finished Easter Egg Wiggle Trivet. As you can see from the name, this pattern is made with wiggle crochet, named after these great little wiggles here worked across the surface of a base mesh. So first you make a base mesh of, these are going to be double crochets with spaces in between here, shaped like our egg. And then we work basically post stitches around those double crochets to create these really beautiful stand-up wiggles. As you can see, great stash buster, just small amounts of these colors, but you need about half a skein or so to make the base mesh that you see here in white. It's also really interesting from underneath. You can kind of see just how it wraps around and see the structure of the trivet itself. But it's basically mostly double crochets and single crochets. So let's go ahead and get started making our own Easter Egg Wiggle Trivet. To make the base shown in the original Wiggle Trivet, I used white, but today I'm going to use green because it's a little easier to demonstrate with and see. But of course, you can use whatever color you like. I've got my slip knot on my hook, and I'm going to start by chaining 12. All right, let's see how many stitches we've got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I just need 2 more. There we are. Then, after you've chained 12, we're going to skip the chain closest to the hook and single crochet in the chain after that. You can work into the top of the chain or the underneath bump, whichever you prefer. I personally always prefer working into the bump for most projects. So we're going to skip that chain closest to the hook and come to the next chain and put our single crochet right there. There we are. And then what we're going to do is we're going to begin our repeat, where we chain 1, skip 1 chain, and double crochet in the next chain 4 times. So let's do that together. We chain 1, come back down here, skip 1, double crochet in the next chain. So I'll get my yarn over here and just insert my hook right under that chain and make our first double crochet. So that's our first repeat. We do that 4 times, so there's 1. Let's do it a second time. We chain 1, skip 1, double crochet in the next. There we are. So there's 2 repeats. Chain 1, skip 1, double crochet in the next. That finishes our 3rd repeat. So for the last one, we chain 1, skip 1, and double crochet in the next chain. That should leave us with only 2 chains left. We're in the right place. So we chain 1, skip 1 chain, and single crochet in the last to mimic what we did on the other end of this row. So that is what the base mesh for your Easter Egg Wiggle Trivet should look like at the end of row 1. So to begin row 2, we start with a chain of 4, and this is going to count as a double crochet and a chain 1. So we count that 3rd chain as the top of our double crochet. Then we want to double crochet again right back in that first stitch. And then we have the repeat that takes us all the way across. Chain 1, skip that next chain space. Let me pull it open here so you can see that. We're going to skip over that chain space and double crochet in the next double crochet. So we chain 1, skip the chain space, and double crochet in the next stitch all the way across. Chain 1, skip that chain space, and just double crochet in the next double crochet. This is going to create a really nice open mesh that's going to be great for us to work our stitches around. Just need to pull up a little bit more yarn here. There we go. So then we chain 1, skip that chain space, and double crochet in the next double crochet. Chain 1, skip 1, or skip the chain space, I should say, and double crochet in the next double crochet. And we're going to continue, like I say, all the way across, including working chain 1, skip 1, double crochet in that last single crochet, the single crochet that started us off in row 1. But then we also want to mimic what we did at the beginning of this row. So we chain 1 and double crochet in that last stitch one more time. There we are. So at the end of row 2, you should have a total of 8 double crochets. And that's including that chain 3. Rows 3 and 4 are simply repeats of row 2. So let's do that one more time. We're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, double crochet right in that very first stitch, and then chain 1, skip that chain space, and double crochet in the next double crochet, all the way across. Because we're increasing, putting an extra stitch on each side there, we will go up by 2 stitches per row. So where we had 8 stitches at the end of row 2, we will have 10 stitches at the end of row 3, and you would have 12 stitches at the end of row 4. So we're just working our way across here. These first 4 rows is where we do all our increasing. Then we will work even for a few rows, and then you decrease for a few rows to create that oval egg shape. So I'm just doing the exact same thing I did on row 2. Chain 1, skip that chain space, and double crochet in the next stitch. Now when you come to the end of rows 3 and 4, of course, when we chain 1 and we go to work in that last stitch, it's going to be the third of those 4 chains that we started with. So I have to sort of turn my chain around here so that I can get under the top of it. Like I said, when I work into the chain row for my first row, I like to work into the back hump, but when I work into the chain for the top of the stitch, I like to work under it, under those top 2 loops. So we've got that double crochet made, then I chain 1 and double crochet right back in that same stitch. So that is what your Easter egg mesh should look like after row 3. As I say, row 4 is just like rows 2 and 3, so we just build that out a little bit more. Then we move on to rows 5 through 10. Rows 5 through 10 of our base mesh are all worked the same. We're going to start with a chain of 4 that once again will count as our double crochet plus chain 1. Then we simply skip the next chain space and double crochet in the next double crochet. And then we chain 1, skip that next chain space, and double crochet in the next double crochet. And we're just going to do that all the way across. These are our worked even rows. We're not increasing at all. We should have 12 double crochets in each one of these rows. Of course, you should have a chain 1 in between each of these double crochets. We want to have the space between our wiggles when we apply them to our base mesh. So I'm just chain 1, skip that next chain space, and double crochet in the next double crochet. A very, very simple crochet mesh. So we'll get all the way to the end here. I'm almost there. There we go. Got just a couple more to make. We don't want to forget to work into the top of that third chain there. So we can sort of move that around, get it where you want it, and put our last double crochet right there in the top of that stitch. So now we've done all our increasing, and rows 5 through 10 are simply working even, just as I did. Chain 4, skip that first chain space, and double crochet in each double crochet with chain 1s in between. So as I just mentioned, rows 5 through 10 should have 12 double crochets in each row. We skipped a row of increasing, so I've only got 10 right here, but in general, that's what your row 5 should look like. Nice and up straight. And 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are all the same. We're just working across evenly. Then with row 11, we begin our decreases. So now we decrease for rows 11 through 13, and they're all worked the same way. We begin with a chain 2 that does not count as a stitch, and then we skip over that first chain space and double crochet in the next stitch. That is going to count this chain 2 and double crochet as our first double crochet 2 together. So when we go back to work into this row, we'll just work into the top of that double crochet and ignore the chain 2. After that, we simply chain 1 and double crochet in each double crochet across until there are just 2 stitches remaining, and that would be 2 double crochets specifically. So as you continue decreasing, of course, with those double crochet 2 togethers at each end, you will decrease by 2 rows for each row that you decrease, rows 11 through 13. So we're going to work our way across here until we have 2 double crochets remaining. Let's see, we've got 3 left, so we work into this one. And then we chain 1, and with these 2 double crochets left, we want to double crochet 2 together in those 2 stitches to match what we did at the beginning. So we yarn over, go into the first of those double crochets, yarn over and pull up our loop, and yarn over and pull through 2. Yarn over, go into the third of those chains. Remember that third chain is the top of our double crochet right there. Yarn over and pull through 2, and then yarn over and pull through all 3. Oop, there we go, to finish that decrease. So for rows 11 through 13, you're going to be decreasing in the beginning with a chain 2 and then a double crochet in the next stitch, and then a double crochet 2 together over the last 2 stitches. So here we are at the end of the next decrease row, and we've got that double crochet, and then we've got that chain 2 and double crochet that counted as our first decrease. So we want to decrease in these 2 stitches now. So I've got that chain 1 made. So now I'm going to start in the top of that double crochet right there, make the first half, stop with 2 loops left on the hook, yarn over, and now we find the top of that double crochet. We're just going to skip over that chain 2 as if it weren't there. Of course, we need it there and it looks great, but we don't need to worry about it for this row. So then we just finish that decrease, and there we have another row of decreases. So as I say, we work those decreases for rows 11, 12, and 13, and then finally we have row 14 to finish it off before we add our edging. So for row 14, we start with a chain 1 and single crochet in the very first stitch. Then we chain 1 and double crochet in the next stitch. We're going to skip over that chain 1 space just as before. We still want to make our mesh. We're just finishing up sort of that oval shape. So now we chain 1 again, skip that next chain space, double crochet in the next. Continue this all the way across until we get to that very last stitch. So you should have 4 double crochets in row 14. Let's see, we've got our single crochet, chain 1. We've got those 4 double crochets, all with chain 1s in between. So now we chain 1. We've got our last stitch here. Remember, we're just going to work into the top of that double crochet, not the chain 2. And we just want to put a single crochet in that final stitch there to finish off that great oval shape. So now all we need to do is add our edging. So to make our mesh edging, we still want to turn at the end of row 14 and chain 1. Then we're simply going to single crochet evenly all around the egg. And if we look at the written instructions, it says to work 3 single crochets around each outer double crochet post. So that means when you're at either end of a row and you've got that double crochet, or if it's a decrease row, that chain 2, you'll be working 3 single crochets around that double crochet. When you come to a stitch, whether it's a single crochet or a double crochet, or the bottom of a single crochet or double crochet, you'll work a single crochet in there. And then when you come to a chain 1 space, you work a single crochet in there. So let's do that together. I've already got my chain 1, so I'll work my first single crochet right in the top of that single crochet we just made. And then up next is a chain space. So I want to work a single crochet right into that chain 1 space. Then I come to a stitch, so I work a single crochet in the stitch. And I'm just going to continue this all the way across this last row. Okay, so we are pretty much at the end of that first row. We've got one more chain 1 space there, so let's get a stitch in there. We've got one more double crochet, and then, one more chain space there, and then of course that single crochet. Just really take your time and pull those stitches apart. There we are. So now we've worked across row 14, but we're just going to continue right down the side of our egg. So we've taken care of row 1, so let's jump down to row 2 here. We can see this is our double crochet 2 together, but for the purpose of the edging, we're just going to think of this leg right here as a double crochet. So I'm going to put 1 single crochet sort of right at the top of that stitch, and then I'll put the other 2 around the bottom half, if you will, of that stitch. I think that lays really nice and evenly, but you can adjust it to your own taste. There's not a specific number of stitches that we need for this edging. It's just meant to give a really nice firm edge to our trivet and, help it stand up, or just help it lay really nice and flat. And like I say, give it a nice edging. We're not going to be working back into it. So if you find that as you're working this edging, you need to add an extra stitch, or it's too many stitches, if it's becoming too roughly, if your gauge is affecting it, don't be afraid to adjust this stitch count or how I'm working this edging to suit you. It's really, like I say, just to make a nice edging. It's nothing, very specific. Here we've got our rows 5 through 10 representative. So it's just a regular double crochet there, easy enough. And you can see too, I'm working around the whole stitch here. I'm not taking the time to sort of split the stitch for this edging or anything like that. Again, for this project, working right around the whole stitch itself is really ideal because it'll give us a great separation for our base mesh when we work it around the rest of these double crochets. So now we're down to what were our increasing rows. So we still have a double crochet there right along the edge. We can work 3 single crochets around. We're just going to continue on around here till we get to the bottom. Looks like this would be my row 2. And of course, on your base mesh, you'll have quite a few more rows to make it a full egg shape here rather than the little sample we're doing. But when you get down to the foundation row, now you just treat those as if it was the top of a stitch. We've got the bottom of a single crochet there, but we're just going to go ahead and work right into it. There's that chain we skipped. So we work into it as if it was a chain 1 space. Bottom of a double crochet. That's what I love about working into that back hump. Now I've got 2 loops there and I can just treat it like a regular stitch. Chain 1 space, right into that space. Get my yarn sorted a little bit there. Then into the stitch, right on across. And then when we get to the other side here of our first row, then we just work right on up the other side, just as we did when we came down the first side of our egg. So I'm almost there. I've got 1 more chain 1 space there. And then there's that single crochet right next to my slip knot. So I'll put that in there. And then, as I say, we just work right on back up the side. We'll jump on up to that double crochet right there and put 3 single crochets right around that one. And as we are working around all these outer double crochets or outer stitches for our base mesh, when we go back in to add our wiggles, we're only going to be working them around these double crochets sort of in the center. We're not going to worry about working them into any of these stitches that we're putting our single crochets around or into. So I'm just working my way right up along that final side here of our egg. There's my work even row. So when you come to, as I say, a chain 2 or whatever for the decreases, whether it was a chain 2 or actually the second half of a decrease, you can sort of just split those stitches across that stitch however it works for you. Don't worry if you need 2 or 4, whatever works, whatever looks good with your gauge. I've got my last row 2 here, side to work into. There's 1, 2. We'll put 1 at the top since we're heading that opposite direction. And that brings me right to that very first single crochet I made. So then we can join and finish off, and we're ready to add our wiggles. So now we're ready to apply the wiggle stripes to our Easter egg trivet. You can see here is the finished trivet, and here's our little sample base mesh. Not exactly the same. There are a few rows we skipped, but we did work each type of row. So let's flip this one over and get a little bit better look at it here. Here you can see all 14 rows that we made have wiggles worked around them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. And you can see from behind here, we have worked those just around the ones without the edging. But we've got those 4 double crochets in the first row and 4 double crochets in the last row. Now, your color order here for adding your mesh stripes is totally up to you. You can have fun with it. The number of colors you can use depends on what colors you want to use, what you've got in your stash. I used 7 different colors here total. The white, of course, which I did use for 1 stripe. Well, 2 stripes. I repeated all my stripes twice. So I just used the same color order there. But you can, again, use whatever colors you want, mix it up, create your own designs. Just like real Easter eggs, there's a tons of possibilities here for you to really add your own touch. One note, as we add these wiggles, you will want to leave a 6 to 10-inch tail at the beginning and the end of each stripe. So you can see from the back here, it makes it a little more obvious. We work 1 row across with this stripe color, and then we break our yarn, and then we do the next stripe across and break our yarn, etc., working up. I recommend that you start at one end and work the first half and then turn it around and come from the other direction. Start at the second end and make the second half. So what that does is as we make those little wiggles, we work around those posts. You can see how that creates the connected line. Then we are going to take those tail ends and just with a quick little stitch, you can sew the end of each wiggle stripe to the stripe above it, right at the base of that curve, if you will. So we work our way up this way. We make the first half, stop there, turn around, make the second half. Again, whatever order you want to make, it doesn't really matter which half you do first. It's all double crochet mesh. Then for the two that meet in the middle, you can see here, I've just sewn them together at the ends directly. So I find that this just gives it a really nice direction for the wiggles. But again, that's another opportunity for you to make it your own. So as I said, it doesn't matter from which end you begin. You can turn it around whichever way you want to begin. But we want to make sure that we're working from the right side. So whatever side you worked your edging on, you want that side to be facing up as you join your wiggle stripes. What we're going to do is we are going to join with a double crochet at the top of the post of the first mesh double crochet stitch. Sounds like a lot. It's this one right here. Go to that very first row, find the first stitch that doesn't have any sort of edging or anything worked around it. It's not single crochet, it's the first double crochet. That right there is where we begin. And we're going to be making post stitches. Essentially, we're going to be working around the post, but we want to start at the top of this double crochet and work our way down. If we bring back in the finished one here, you can see, hopefully, how I've gone down this one and then up the next. So we go down that one, up the next, down that one, and up the next. And that creates that wiggle pattern. So let's go ahead and do that together. As I said, we join with a double crochet. So I'm going to hold, I want to make sure I've got my long tail there for my sewing. I'm going to hold that in my non-hook fingers, yarn over twice, find the top of that double crochet I want to join to, just go right around that post like for a front post stitch, and make my double crochet. Yarn over and pull through two, yarn over and pull through that loop, and behind the loop I'm sort of holding there in my hand. Then I am going to make 4 more double crochets all around that same post. So I would like to hold on to my tail here until I get through 1 or 2 more stitches, but you can let go of it whenever you're ready. So there's 1. Now I feel like it's a little bit more secure. 2, 3, and 4. We want a total of 5 double crochets worked around each of these posts. So that takes care of the first post. So let's lay that down a little bit. You can see how they're basically post stitches, but just by working them this little bit differently, it's not really in an next row. It's all worked on the surface. It really creates that great wiggle effect. So we've worked down our first post. So now we want to jump right on over to this post and work up that one, down that one, and then up that one. So to do that, we are going to just come right to that next double crochet right there. We'll yarn over, and now we're coming from this side. So we're going to really, you can see, fold up your mesh, wiggle it around, but take your time to lay it out between stitches so that you can really see what you're doing. Now, just like the previous one, I want 5 double crochets worked around this post. This time I'm working from the bottom to the top. So there's 3 and 4 and 5. And now I can stop and look again to make sure I'm not getting twisted around and confused. I have worked my way up this post stitch, or up this stitch rather, and now I need to work down this stitch. So just as before, we want to turn a little bit so that we're working from the correct direction to create these really beautiful wiggles. So there's 1. You can see I'm at the top of that stitch. I'm working back towards the edging now. And again, a total of 5 double crochets. So there's 3 and 4. Oop. There we are. And 5. Just squeeze those all in there. We really want some really exuberant ruffles. So then we can lay it down again and see where we're at. Down, up, down. So now we're going to go up that very last one for this row. That's the single crochet. It's got an edging there, so we want to stop on that double crochet right there. So we want to turn our work around again, yarn over, and now we work our way up this final double crochet here. So there's 1, 2, and 3. I should have pulled up some more yarn. Let me do that. There we go. And 4 and 5. So now this is the end of our first wiggle stripe row. Let me pull in the finished one again. You can see we've made sort of a W shape, and that's that W shape right there on that first row. So now what we want to do is go ahead and break this yarn, again, leaving a good 6 to 10 inch tail so that we can sew that together when we're all done. And then you can just pull that end through to finish off that row. Now I want you to just ignore those tails as best you can and pull in your next stripe color. Again, whatever colors you like to do. I always keep my little half balls and partial balls of Lily Sugar and Cream. It's just such a great yarn for projects like this and really any sort of summery project, and you can really add a great punch of color. I do want to note that, as I've mentioned several times, I am using Lily Sugar and Cream, and besides just being a great yarn, it is 100% cotton. So if you're making anything that has to do with heat, like a trivet or a pot holder, you do want to use 100% cotton yarn. So as we continue our way up our trivet, again, we want to start on one side and work our way across, and we always start at the top of the first double crochet of that row. So we come up here, there's that first double crochet right there. We want to do the same thing. Get our yarn here, secured in our hand, yarn over twice, and find the top of that first double crochet right there. So we can make our first double crochet, and then 4 more, working right on down that post. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can see I'm really just manhandling this. I'm squeezing it around. I'm pushing these things out of the way. Don't worry, it's just yarn. It can handle it. After we've made that first one, we can lay it down here, sort of find our path. And as you continue, you won't have to do this every time, but I just want to make sure we can all see where we're going here. You can really push that first row out of the way. So now we've worked down that post. So then we go up that post, then down that one, up that one, down that one, and up that one. Same thing we did before. We just got more stitches to work around, so we'll have a little bit more wiggle in there. There we go. So I'm going to yarn over and we worked down that post. So now we want to turn so we can work up this post, the one right next to it. So same thing, we put 5 double crochets around this one. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we can look at our work and see that's the next double crochet. So we need to go down that one. We start at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We worked down towards the previous row, so we know we're going to be working up the next post, so we can sort of pull our work apart. See that next post right there? Just basically turn your work right around and get around that one now for 5, working up this double crochet. There's 1. And if you find that, you accidentally put one in the middle of the stitch or something, you can just slide it right on down that post, really just kind of shove it out of the way and get those stitches all in there. So let's see, this would be 4 and 5. So we should, I think, have 2 more double crochets in this row that are available for wiggling. Yes, 2 more to go. So we'll go down this one and up the final one. You always want to start at the top of the first double crochet at the row, and the last one you want to finish by going up as well. That's just going to give us a really even look. Now, of course, that said, it's your project. If you want to mix it up and have your wiggles going different directions, you can absolutely do that. I just recommend you sit with your mesh for a little bit and sort of think about how that's going to work. Maybe even sketch it out a little bit on a piece of paper so you can plan out your wiggles ahead of time. So now we've got 4 there. I need 1 more. And then we are at the end. If we turn it around here, the end of that row, we've got just 1 more double crochet before our edging. So we want to work up that final double crochet. We start at the bottom, really give it some tension there. I'm pulling down on that mesh to get my double crochet here at the bottom of this post. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now that was the final one for this row. Let's lay it out and take a look at it here. Get all our little ends and everything sorted. So you can see we went down, up, down, and ended on up, which is what we want to do. And there's our original. It's got sort of, I don't know how to count them here. 1, 2, 3 U's, I guess you could say 1, 2, 3 U's on this one. So we will go ahead and break that yarn just as we did before, leaving enough room there to sew them all together and simply finish that off. So as I say, you continue working up for the first half and then turn it around and work up for the second half. And then the last thing to do is just to connect these little stripes. So for our final assembly, we won't need the crochet hook anymore, but you will need a yarn needle. We're just going to start again at one end, and you'll do this to both ends of the row. We're going to get our yarn on our needle here. And then what I find I like to do is sew to the 4th stitch from the end. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I found that when I sewed to that one, it was really nice, but you could do it to the 5th one if you prefer, wherever you like to sew. So I'll just go in on the 4th one, maybe bring it back out on the 5th one here, and then just go right back into that end. There we are. And just give that a little snug up. You can see how that just pulls that together so that they're not all loose and flappy. And then, of course, you need to weave in that end as you normally would. I find that for this sort of project, it's a whole lot easier to weave it in underneath. Now you can see on the stitches we just made, we've got that same look that we had on the back of the original. And of course, once you get those ends to the back, they're a whole lot easier to bury in the bottom there. And then you can trim them off, do that all the way around, as I said, for each row. And then when you get to the middle 2 rows that are facing each other, you can just sew those very ends together right there. And that's how to crochet the Easter Egg Wiggle Trivet. Again, you can go to the link in the description, or you can search mooglyblog.com Easter Egg Wiggle Trivet. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.